in a constant state of fear and misery. No, you're missing anymore. Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No, live in a constant state of fear and misery. No, you're missing anymore.
Hello, hello, hello. Today is Wednesday, November 7th, and we're bringing you Block Digest episode 138 at block height 549,170. And I am not kidding. I am going to punch Bitcoin in the dick. Stop spitting out like 4 blocks in like 2 minutes right before we start. Stop it. I will punch you in the dick, Bitcoin.
How do you know that Bitcoin is male? Maybe it's female or non-binary.
You're assuming too much.
That's not a thing. Okay.
Why are you assuming Bitcoin's gender, Shinobi?
Because it is obviously a man. It's kicking governments in the dick.
Are you saying that women can't kick the government?
No. I'm just sexist like that.
You're boxing yourself into a corner there.
and you're going to lose.
Yeah, man. Girls are strong. So, hey, everybody. How are y'all doing today on this Wednesday?
Yeah, sitting around, drinking some balls, guarana soda, which I was totally paid or not to mention. Nah. Now you won't know.
You just killed it, man. But yeah, you just messed up getting too much of that stuff. You got to drown it.
All right. What's going on? Do you need to know before we get started? You want to share the funny thing with everybody?
Oh my lord.
I mean, I'm not going to accidentally show myself on. I'm not going to risk accidentally showing myself on camera, so I'll save it till the end, maybe when I have that figured out. But I am going to steal a joke from Provost on Twitter and say that I'm celebrating the anniversary of No2X, which is actually tomorrow, but since it was off by one error that killed it, figured we'd do it a day early, and we almost made it the title, but the consensus did not happen with the rest of the crew. So I am still I am operating my minority title, which is remember the 7th of November with a no, giant no.
Yeah, I think I like the bomb improvement proposals too, but yeah, definitely remember this 8th or the 7th of November, just off by 1. That is a good joke.
Mm-hmm.
I also can't wait to troll the hell out of what's his face from Ars Technica, who wrote that terrible article last year and saying that Lightning was not going to come to fruition or it's not going to be enough. It's like, whoa, you lost.
Yeah.
Ha. Alrighty.
Yeah, what's the big news, man? What's been going on with the block explorers?
Got a new block explorer, guys. Blockstream made a block explorer. The Illuminati plan is coming to fruition, and they will capture all of the block explorer space so that you only look at stuff with their block. I don't know.
It's a pretty looking block explorer.
Yeah, I mean it's beyond just a nice look. I think they are really doing a great job. Just in the entire architecture of this. I mean, first off, and this though, these first few things we are going to have to take at face value. But they're claiming there's no analytics scripts on the site. There's no tracking, so that they're not going to be or claim they're not going to be keeping any records of IP addresses or anybody who's looking at what specific information on the site. So that is going to be a huge benefit compared to most block explorers out there, which I almost guarantee are doing exactly that. Like that's, I think one way in order to really destroy your privacy that a lot of people don't think about is when you take one of your own addresses, and especially on ClearNet, you go look that up in a block explorer, you're giving a very high degree of certainty that that's your address, and you're doxing yourself in terms of IP addresses to that or any other accounts or identities that might get tied through cookies or other things in your browser, because that's what most people do with the block explorer. They look at their own addresses, and unless you see from that IP address a very like regular kind of sifting through all kinds of shit, like looking at a bunch of different addresses all over the place or going through a lot of different blocks, like you have a very high degree of certainty that whatever an individual is looking at through a block explorer is something relevant to them. Because unless you're really just trolling around it, looking at data just to satisfy your curiosity about things, like there's no other reason to be using a block explorer except checking your own transactions, balances, and so on. So that's a huge benefit as well. It has support for native SegWit Bech32. So I know that's something that a lot of block explorers out there really been lagging on. And I'm sure there's probably a lot more out there, but the only one I'm aware of off the top of my head that recognizes Bech32 is OXT, which was started by Laurent MT and is now ran with the Samurai team. So that's definitely a nice thing to have that in there. You'll actually be able to look at scripts and addresses and such without it just kind of blurring into an unrecognized format. And the last thing I really like is Tor support. So they've actually, at the bottom of the Explorer, there's for Tor version 3 and Tor version 2, there are onion addresses for both address formats. So regardless of which version of Tor you're running, you can reach the Block Explorer over a hidden service. So even if you don't trust that Blockstream is not keeping records or not running analytics, you can at least connect over things through a Tor circuit and have some higher degree of disconnection from something that could actually be tied to you specifically when looking at information. And so like all of these things, I think, are just like they're really actually kind of thinking through, like, even with something as simple as a block explorer, like how do we take all of the downsides and security risks that come with something like this that most people aren't even aware of and try to negate all of these issues. And just beyond all this, it's not really nice and polished yet. Like, for instance, I believe it won't actually load addresses properly that have had more than 100 transactions or something due to a limitation in what it can actually load and process. But I fully expect over time, like, a lot of these things will get rounded out and dealt with, and a lot more functionality and information brought into the picture, such as, being able to recognize who mined a block, analyzing the Coinbase op return output that a lot of mining pools use, having more metrics like the amounts of fees in a block and things like that aren't really built into the Explorer yet. But, I think given the other features and the other privacy-centric architecture choices that they're making, I am personally willing to forgive that. Like, I would much rather see them take steps to actually ensure this is something users can interact with in a way that's not going to damage their privacy over the long term. And really, at this point, like, I think, like, I've pretty much been using OXT exclusively since that was actually launched and became popularized. And really, I don't think I'm going to use anything except OXT and the Blockstream Explorer at this point. Like, it's two groups that really understand, like, privacy at a deep level and are really doing everything they can to minimize the damage to users' privacy. And I really think, like, most people out there are just going to use what they're most familiar with in terms of brand and awareness. So people who actually care about these things need to bring more awareness to things like this Blockstream Explorer or the OXT Explorer by the Samurai team, and actually get that out there into normal people's minds so that it's something that they use just because they're aware of it. Otherwise, like, most people are just going to keep going to things like Blockchain.Info and not really appreciate or understand the damage they're doing to their privacy, and through extension, the damage they're doing to everyone else's privacy as they start shrinking anonymity sets just through leaking the information they have. So, like, in that, I'm really happy to see this get built out. And the cherry on top to boot is it actually has Liquid support as well. So you can use it for the Bitcoin mainnet, the Liquid network, and as well as testnet.
Heck yeah, man. I mean, I'm kind of like a little shameful here. I mean, I hadn't done much block exploring this year, but I mean, I always kind of just go to blockchain.info kind of as a, as like, just my muscle memory is like, if I do check an address, it's usually really quick through that. And, I just don't really I didn't really understand the amount of, privacy that I was leaking, and just sort of searching these same few addresses. And that's something that, even as someone that's been using Bitcoin for a while, it's like those little aspects, I don't really, think about it that much. So whenever somebody's like, putting out this block explorer with all these aspects to where it's avoiding these analytics under the hood, it's definitely something that's appealing, and it's something that's marketing it, to where people will use it. And I'm just thinking about how it's like we are starting to see this division more and more, where there's like this closed loop ecosystem of block explorers, wallets, coins, and everything to where the transactions can be censored. And then there is this side that requires this anonymity set to actually keep, this is an important aspect of fungibility, and to just keep the system, censorship resistant. And I mean, it's really a vital part of the system. So I'm glad that more and more of these companies and people that are putting together these different wallets are working towards those privacy features and stuff that really the network needs. And, I'll just keep moving with them.
And, a nice thing I see, but I do kind of have to give Electrum a little bit of shit here, because last I checked, I didn't see OXT support in there. And I think that should be there as well. But apparently they're planning on making Blockstream.info the default block explorer in the next release of Electrum. And so that'll be nice, because a lot of users, like, Electrum is a hugely popular wallet, and a lot of users kind of just will go click details. It'll launch them into a block explorer, and they'll just stick with whatever the default is. And to have default set up like this, that's at least claiming to respect users' privacy and not log everything, I think would be a huge win, because that's just the minute people start updating to Electrum, they're being defaulted into something that's a lot more private and leaking a lot less of their information.
Yeah, man, I'm getting excited about a Raspblitz and an Electrum personal server. I mean, like, I hadn't sent checked much block explorers yet this year, but I mean, I'm going to try and dig into it a little bit towards the end of this year.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it looks like there's something else going on with Blockstream I could dig into. What's this all about?
So Liquid has launched binaries, and there is now wallet support. So first off, I know that they made a tweet earlier claiming that this system was trustless, and I'm willing to bet that that was just a non-technical PR person trying to make a snazzy tweet. So I think it goes without saying that Liquid is not completely trustless, especially in dealing with Bitcoin. The Federation obviously has that locked up on the main chain, and it's kind of useless unless they'll actually let you withdraw it. But in terms of the assets that are native to Liquid, this does actually provide some kind of benefit, because it will refuse to acknowledge any block that is invalid if the federators are actually able to get in and manipulate the hardware and software to the point where they change what it's operationally doing in an automatic way. Your node will reject anything invalid. And that still has some dynamic similar to the main network as far as economic weight of nodes in dealing with these native assets. But it is, I would say, a little less strong than the main chain. It's still not entirely useless. But they've dropped the official binary for all three major operating systems. I believe Windows, Mac, and Linux. I actually have a Liquid node up running right now. So since we're talking about another network, just for shits and giggles, Liquid is at block height 47,458. And it is actually kind of weird watching how quickly the block count pops up on this. I'm still not actually used to it. But, this node, you can fully audit the blockchain yourself. And I will point out for anybody who actually does want to run this to either just for shits and giggles or to actually kind of play around and see what you can do on the network. If you are not running a Bitcoin node, you have to, sorry, 1 second, guys. I forgot what the field was. Validate Pegin, I believe. But if you just check, validate Pegin is a dash option for launching the daemon. It's automatically set to true, so you have to set that to false by putting an equal sign and a 0 after that option when you launch the daemon. Otherwise, it will look to connect with a mainnet Bitcoin node to actually validate the Pegin, and it does that by default. So you have to disable that if you're not actually running a full node on the system you try to set up a Liquid node on. But, obviously, you can use the client to send or receive Bitcoin on Liquid. So yes, like if you are a member, I believe Rock Trading is the only exchange actually giving users access to Liquid right now directly. But you can actually transact on the network yourself if you can get access to Liquid Bitcoin. You can send and receive issued assets on the Liquid sidechain, and you can actually issue assets yourself. And now dealing with other assets besides Bitcoin is obviously you're going to need Bitcoin on Liquid to pay for the fees, which are hard-coded to 1 Satoshi a byte. So if you want to tinker around with the assets on the chain, keep in mind you do have to get your hands on some Liquid Bitcoin first. And really, I kind of want to see people play around with this and really push the limits on this trust model and like what users can actually get away with directly on this platform without any issues. And I mean, one other thing I do want to say is you can peg Bitcoin in yourself, but if you choose to try and do that, remember, you can put Bitcoin into Liquid yourself. You cannot withdraw it without going through a Federation member. So if you put Liquid Bitcoin into this sidechain independently without going, and you do not have an account with any of the Federation members, those coins are stuck in there until you get a membership with a Federation member and go through the KYC process to be able to withdraw through them. So do not take Bitcoin and put it into the system independently of the Federation members without awareness that you are locking those coins in there forever unless you register with a member and withdraw through them. So keep that in mind. But, like I said, I really want to see users kind of push this to the limit and see what this platform can be used for. And I mean, don't don't sit here and try to like delude yourself into thinking that this is not a federated system, that there is not some degree of trust involved here. There is, but I still think it's kind of interesting to think about what you can actually do with this system and what kind of utility can be taken away from it aside from just trading and arbitrage, given that users actually can directly interact with the system through a node like this. And I do believe that there are going to be SPV wallets coming out with liquid support soon as well. So I think this is going to be an interesting thing to see. Like actually take a trust model anchored into the Bitcoin chain that has different trade-offs and see what we can really do with that.
Yeah, man, I'm interested to see that too. And I'm sure, just like all these developments as they come out, there's going to be some people getting their coin stuck here. They're, trying to game this thing out as much as possible. But it definitely is something that, we've been looking forward to seeing. And I mean, we've talked about how a lot of people, they just, they just don't want to trust Tether, but, they need some sort of asset to move and arbitrage across exchanges. And, I think that this liquid sidechain might be that, but like you're saying, it's going to take a lot of work to test that all out. I'm curious though, like how long you think before we see rare Pepes on liquid?
I don't think you can do it the same. There's no
Man, I thought there was a counterparty token with the liquid Bitcoin.
There's the assets, but I mean, part of the whole rare Pepe thing is actually embedding descriptions and pointers to the rare Pepe art, which is stored on a server somewhere. And I have not like really dug into confidential assets to any serious degree at all. I have no idea whether it could support the completely integral aspects of rare Pepe, like hot links to the rare Pepe picture in the actual chain.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I definitely think it's more of like you're saying, sort of like just a back end, something for the back end of these exchanges and trying to help move this liquidity around. So, I mean, if you got the time, spool up a liquid node and start filling around. But it's always reckless going out there and trying to do some of this stuff on your own. So, beware.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it spools up pretty quick. Just remember, it is a trusted environment, so don't go throwing money in there that you can't get out through a Federation member. But on that note, I guess, Janine, what other anniversaries are we celebrating?
Well, in terms of the reporting, this is actually another off by one error because the real anniversary of this event was yesterday, but we didn't have a show, so I'm reporting it today. None of these anniversaries are taking place on show dates. So besides the off by one error of No2X, the 1 year anniversary that happened technically yesterday, but the blog post is dated today, I believe, 1 year ago, was the critical vulnerability in the Parity wallet library contract that was the standard Ethereum Multi-Sig contract. And if you are new and don't remember this news, this affected all users with assets in the Parity Multi-Sig wallet that was deployed after July 20th, 2017. The kicker was that this multi-sig wallet that failed was a new version deployed on that date of July 20th, 2017 to fix a prior vulnerability that had been exploited on July 19th, 2017. And this second vulnerability was exploited accidentally on November 6th last year by a user who went by the name of DevOps199 and basically deleted the library turned wallet and wiped out the library code, which in turn rendered all multi-sig contracts unusable and funds frozen since their logic, this is from the Parity blog post that they wrote after the event, any state modifying function was inside the library. And if I remember correctly, I think about $300 million worth of Ether at the time was lost. This was November, so that was probably the height. Ethereum price was probably high around that time, but probably a different value this time. 1 year later, though, the reason I wanted to point this out is because Parity and Ethereum in general are still not without massive issues in this area in terms of code quality. As you heard a couple shows ago, I pointed out that the Constantinople hard fork didn't happen, and that's like one of a number of delays that have happened where they find vulnerabilities in the code and they decide not to release it. Now, not releasing bad code is a good thing, but if you just keep making promises about due dates and you have to keep extending them for like several years, something's not really going on well with your scheduling and expectations. And Jameis Lop tweeted at the end of October this year that he attempted to use various Parity implementations, and the results were the following. He did a full validation sync of the Parity client, which took almost 4 days, which was 5 times longer, only 8 months after I believe he previously did this. And as a comparison, he also did a full validation sync of Geth, which got stuck at block 3,804,607 with an invalid gas error. Parity's Bitcoin implementation got stuck at the SegWit activation block, which means that they have a consensus bug in their code. As I don't know if they fixed it since then. This was him tweeting on, I think, October 28th. And Adam Back responded to that thread joking that he would need a $250,000 Supermicro with terabytes of RAM in order to run a Ethereum node successfully. And Jameson joked that anything above $20,000 is the piss-off threshold as established by someone who is apparently now known as Mr. Wanker. So also want to point out that we are now a year away from this hack or accidental hack. And Ethereum, as far as I know, still does not have a consumer-facing multi-sig wallet. So there you go.
Well, there's no way we could have done both anniversaries, so we nestled ourselves right in the middle here to talk about both of them. And yeah, there's definitely some issues there still going on with Ethereum and Parity and how exactly they're going to handle that, because I know it's been a pretty controversial discussing that as far as bailing those guys out or really letting that one burn to show that they actually don't have control over this chain. And I know that we recently saw some article about Vitalik saying that he needed to step away from the Ethereum chain and from all this development, and to where people don't look at him as a leader. And boy, it was pretty fierce questioning right after that article where people were like, is Vitalik leaving? And he was very, evident about saying, no, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm still doing this. I'm still going to be doing that, and all around Ethereum. And it's a real problem. I mean, over a year ago now at these blockchain meetups, I was talking about, if they really wanted Ethereum to take off at the time, they wanted Ethereum evangelists. And I was telling them, like, you got to get rid of Vitalik. And they were just, that really upset them to where I thought they wanted to fight me. And so it's, yeah, it's hard going over there. It's going to take a while before all that gets flushed out, if it gets flushed out. I mean, the reality is, like you're saying, I mean, there's all sorts of actual technical issues there that is not really all these social aspects too. So yeah, year anniversary from all that stuff going on, and the No 2X, that one's big. I mean, like, that was a day to celebrate. I remember going on air that day with some drinks in hand. It was a fun day. Remember the 8th of November.
Mm-hmm. And to put into perspective the multi-sig thing, it's pretty funny because one of the earliest Bitcoin multi-sig wallets, at least SPB wallets, your average person could easily get their hands on, was Copay by BitPay, one of the most incompetent, dumb shit companies in the entire ecosystem, was able to put together a solid and secure multi-sig wallet, while Ethereum struggles to even get it implemented in the core protocol.
Yeah, and this is why, like, I mean, every time people talk about complex smart contracts on Ethereum, I just think, like, if you're not even at the multi-sig level, like I've said before, I think that's, like, it's not even really a smart contract, but it is, like, like one of the simplest contracts outside of just, a regular transaction. So if they can't even do that, I have absolutely no confidence in anything that is more complex than that. Like, I'm not touching it with a 39.5 a pole.
Yeah.
All right. Any last words to kick Ethereum while it's down, or shall we move along?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there has been a lot of talk. Who was it? I mean, they have this whole, diversity and inclusion going on, I think, at the last event. And it's like, why is no one in Ethereum talking about the weirdness around Gavin Wood? Like, does no one care? Do they actually agree with him? Like, I mean, I didn't really put my blog post out there, so maybe that's part of the reason people just can't find it. But I mean, Gavin tweeted about it, so you could have just looked up the story. It's not like he was hiding it completely. But like, why is no one talking about that? I feel like that's a PR bomb waiting to explode. It was bad enough when Vitalik was like, child porn is not as bad as heroin or whatever, or possession of child porn is not as bad. But then, I mean, like, that's like a very bad opinion. It's another thing when you write a creepy story about that thing that he wrote about. It was like beyond disturbing. So I'm wondering why no one is talking about that and why that's like an open secret.
Yeah, it's disturbing that it is, but it's kind of like the culture of Silicon Valley, and just all these just I want to say it's just like extravagance, where it's just I'm wealthy, and so I can afford this and these pleasures, and if something happens, I can afford to pay off the right people, and it's just like extravagant way of showing off wealth. And that's just me speculating, but I mean, it is a culture where they're, like you were saying, I mean, Vitalik didn't just come out of left field saying that. There was actually like kind of a narrative being discussed about, we shouldn't hold people that molest children that accountable because they're actually victims themselves. And it was a big push back then, and he just jumped in with it. And I mean, Gavin Wood being next to him in Ethereum and everything just like makes it a little extra spooky with that story and all. But yeah, I think there's a culture there where they just don't see that as like that as that bad of a thing, I guess, or shocking. And it's hard to speculate and say that it's anything other than just some. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't. It's something that's disturbing for sure.
I mean, you could argue that people who engage in a lot of crimes were probably at one point the victim of something as children. I don't think that, like, I mean, yes, you can have some empathy for them and do work to ensure that maybe that doesn't happen, so that you don't then, continue the cycle of creating more of them through time. But the idea that just because something happened to a person that entitles them to commit the same act to others makes absolutely no sense.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So just a very weird crowd to me in general in terms of ethics.
Then the etherheads.
Alrighty, Janine, to the next one. What is this scam target doing?
Yeah, so I really like, Rick, how you did the little stellar bombs in the picture in case anyone gets like flagged about the title of today's show. But the reason that we had those stellar bombs is because we have more news from the front about the most popular crypto wallet known as Blockchain, who announced yesterday that they would be airdropping a bunch of stellar lumens to their users in conjunction, according to Bitcoin Magazine, with the Stellar Development Foundation. And apparently Jeff McCaleb, who, as you may know, is the creator of Ripple, and Stellar in its architecture is very close to Ripple. He basically created it after he left Ripple and fell out with them. He says in some statement somewhere. He believes that airdrops can be powerful tools when it comes to building the crypto ecosystem and boosting mainstream adoption. Well, yeah, and obviously Peter Smith agrees with that. They're looking for a protocol network built for scalability with active and a rapidly growing ecosystem. Okay, I don't actually see that happening, but whatever. So basically they want to do this huge airdrop of $125 million worth of Stellar. But there's a catch, because in order to get them, you have to not only have a blockchain wallet account, but you have to verify your identity first. So you basically have to KYC yourself in order to get this free airdrop, which is obviously not free, because if you have to provide data on yourself, well, number one, that's bad from a privacy standpoint, but obviously if you have to provide data, you're giving them something that they need in order to continue operating and continue doing these airdrops without getting in trouble, I guess. So I would just say that it's not worth it. If you even have a blockchain wallet account still or are using it, you should probably stop, because this literally is not a wallet you want to be using. The fact that they're doing this airdrop and putting so much effort into it, but they still haven't added SegWit is just, it's beyond stupid. Like, they're doing this whole hardware wallet integration thing, they're doing this airdrop thing, but no SegWit. And even though they said they would have it as of like last year, so something is going on.
It's almost 2 years ago at this point.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
like
because
3 or 4
yeah,
months shy of it.
yeah, because Peter Smith said it would be ready in January or something, or they were prepared in January. So yeah, they were ready for a long time. They haven't done it, which is really stupid. So yeah,
That's their
So-
move, though, right? I mean, their move is like, we're going to build this closed ecosystem, and you know, we're going to incentivize people to sign up because we're going to airdrop them Stellar. I mean, yeah, it's they just don't want the whole SegWit Lightning route to win, so they're just trying to close everything off and make it their own little ecosystem.
I mean, what I would personally like to know is, because Stellar and Keybase announced that they were partnering, what was it, like several months? Actually, no, that was actually around this time last year, November, December, I think. There was an announcement from Keybase that they were partnering with Stellar to do something. They didn't ever specify what that was, but it's now a year later, and as far as I know, I haven't seen anything with Stellar on Keybase. So I don't, all of these partnerships are kind of like, just pockets of air that I don't see a lot coming out of them.
Yeah, but in Blockchain.Info's case, I mean, like, this is just beyond shape. Like, I mean, let alone like the ledger clone that they're doing that's locked down to only work with Blockchain.Info. They recently, what was the name? I forget the name of the company. I want to say Stratagem, but don't quote me on that. It should be in Blockchain's Twitter feed very recently. But they just bought and folded in a deep learning company into Blockchain.Info that's specialized in analyzing sports betting and predicting outcomes of events based on parsing data sets. So they launched this hardware wallet that's locked down to only work on their platform. They fold this deep learning company into their ecosystem, and now they're partnering with Stellar and doing an airdrop for $25 a person that requires you to dox yourself as a block. And remember, when you dox yourself as a Blockchain.Info user, you are giving them your real world identity, which is now going to get tied to every single one of your addresses. Every single one. Okay? Like that's for $25. They are literally doing everything they can to just be shady as hell, and be very careful with holding that still right now, Janine. I'm putting you up on the main screen. Yep, that's exactly what he's doing. Okay, he's sticking his ass in the air and giving everybody a ladder to climb into his ass. Okay, fuck Peter Smith.
Oh man, yeah, we are in trouble with this story.
Yeah, so I just want to point out this is an art sculpture in Prague, but when I saw it, my first thought was this would make a great venue for a shitcoin conference. Stellar, why don't you go and check it out?
All right, now be very careful when you kill the screen share, Janine.
I know.
The camera.
I'm trying to be very careful. It's hard to see.
Well, yeah, that's a great
Put,
photo. It's
put
worth
your
all the
thumb
trouble.
over, and then there we go. Okay, it's done.
OPSEC Pro.
You're safe. You're safe.
Yeah, but hey, did they say for sure it's $25? Because I thought it was saying it was an unknown percentage to each wallet.
They have 125 million in total, and I recall seeing, I think Mark Santori saying it was $25 a person.
$25, huh? To give away your identity and like just let yourself be tracked in this system. I mean, or even just to enter that ecosystem. Really, it's kind of a joke, but yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's like the companies like this are just getting like unbelievably shady. Like all the, like it's literally like, okay, like I was thinking this the other day, and this has nothing really to do with Blockchain.Info. I mean, except kind of tangentially, but it's like Coinbase claiming that they want to become the Google of the Bitcoin space. You already are. You are the shady, incompetent piece of shit who doesn't give a damn about their customer except to the degree that they can scrape all of your private information and turn you into a monetized product for their own benefit at your own fucking loss. Like, and just manipulate the shit out of every person that they bring into their ecosystem. They don't give a fuck about people. They don't give a fuck about building an open financial system. All they give a shit about is getting every bit of information on you so they can track you, they can tag you, they can monetize you and monitor you. That's all they give a shit about, companies like this. They already are the Googles of the fucking Bitcoin space. They're unethical scumbags that are going to do everything they can to undermine their customers' privacy, sovereignty, and ability to actually control their money without somebody peering over their shoulder and telling them what they can and can't do.
Yeah, is it any surprise that these are most of the guys that signed the NYA and, we're sporting 2X? And I mean, that's where, it's just like that side is just getting more and more coalesced. And you really have to ignore all that crap press release statements that come out saying, we're going to go help third world countries and, bank the unbanked. And I mean, really, it's all about coin listings and, taking that data and trying to make a buck on it.
Like, it just completely, it's nothing but a net negative to people in this ecosystem. And like, people need to stop using shit like that. They really do.
Yeah. And, Truth Monster, you're crazy, dude. Sorry, I just saw that in the chat talking about it's his favorite wallet. All right. So you want to move along? Do y'all have any last words on this story?
Go for it, man.
All right, guys. So talking about India again. So we know that a cryptocurrency circular issued from the Reserve Bank of India is still in place. And last we heard about the situation over there, the CEO of UnoCoin was arrested for installing an ATM that offered a few digital assets, including Bitcoin. We've heard some back and forth from the Supreme Court of India and the RBI. The Supreme Court wants clear guidance for cryptocurrency in the country, while the RBI is telling them to stay out of their way on this topic. So, now's a very risky time to operate crypto business in India, but blockchain business, that might be a different story. And, that's why I grabbed this piece of news. In an upsetting development, India's biggest private company, Reliance Industries, which is an oil and energy conglomerate, completed a transaction with the US-based chemical distributor Tricon Energy over the R3's Corda blockchain, which, we know it's not that revolutionary of a moment for India, but it's being kind of played up to be that way. HSBC of India and ING for Tricon Energy brokered the deal and issued a statement on the transaction saying, quote, This transaction validates the commercial and operational viability of blockchains as an alternative to conventional exchanges for paper-based documents. And then that's end quote. Coin Center News goes on to mention that compared to current timelines of up to 7 to 10 days of processing export documentation, the blockchain solution facilitates this transaction in less than a day. And HSBC's India's head of global banking, Hitendra Dev, stated, quote, "The use of blockchain is a significant step towards digitizing trade. The overall efficiency it brings to trade finance ensures cost effectiveness, quicker turnaround, and potentially unlocks liquidity for businesses," end quote. And yeah, I grabbed this and put it on the desk since we really haven't been seeing anything out of India except an unwillingness to accept cryptocurrencies for their ability to help individuals, it seems like. But this looks like they're much more jazzed about this idea of blockchains being able to find an efficiency, which we all know by this point in time is highly unlikely. And it's not really going to put India and the Indian people in a good position for this new economy. And you know, we are supposed to hear back from the Reserve Bank of India on the 20th of this month. So, you know, in about 2 weeks, and to see if they clarify their position on cryptocurrencies in India. However, I'm not really anticipating good news at this point from these stories that we are seeing come out of the country. I don't really like speculating in a conspiracy that much, but it looks pretty clear to me. We have the R3 Corda protocol, you know, the bank's blockchain, and these energy conglomerates working together to try and prove their use case. While at the same time, we're seeing a cracking down on currency of all kinds. So, yeah, I don't want to see some of this game theory played out where we could see dystopia versus utopia of individual sovereignty, but it looks like we're starting to see the battle lines drawn here. So, yeah, things are looking more and more like they might turn in a direction we're not going to be happy about there in India. But I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope for the best. But, yeah, what did you guys think about this as far as India not using crypto, but this blockchain they're pretty psyched about? What do you think?
I think it completely fits with the narrative we've been seeing kind of leak out into the West, where they're effectively just doing everything they can to stomp out businesses in the ecosystem and really kind of work on some form of regulation or legislation that just outright bans all of it, with the room for legacy institutions to still try and use this air quote technology. And I mean, it fits perfectly with the country that literally overnight demonetized 80% of its cash supply without really giving two fucks like how that hurt the people. Just, we must fight the air quote dark money.
Yeah, and one of the blockchain not Bitcoin narratives that has really shown itself lately is, especially in the last day, is the one about using blockchains for voting and, like, I don't know, saving the election, which is just downright stupid. But there was another New York Times article today that advocated using blockchains for voting infrastructure. And it's like, I don't know, most of these things, like, there are ways that it would maybe make sense to use, like, the Bitcoin blockchain for timestamping in a very limited sense, but it's not useful and it's not solving the problems that, I mean, at least the US actually has in terms of the voting infrastructure. Like, it's not going to solve the fact that most of these machines use very stupid passwords. No one's going to fix that. And the fact that they publish it on sheets of paper and they actually have to say, oh, I'm sorry, the username and the password are basically identical. Just make sure you put them in the right slot. That's just, it's so embarrassing. And there's a bunch of people saying today, like, this, it's just so, it's kind of funny, but it's also just showing how much of a disconnect there is between journalists at the New York Times who think they can solve an election with a blockchain, and the fact that actually, apparently, the thing that was causing trouble in states like New York was that it was raining and people's fingers were getting wet and the scanners weren't working. I mean, that's so far the story that they're telling people. You also have strange things happening, which, I mean, it's kind of a neighbor of Colorado, so that would get into the next one. But apparently somebody was it governor? There was a guy in Nevada who he died like half a month ago, and he won the election in some part of Nevada. And he actually runs like a bunch of brothels, legal brothels in Nevada. And he's written, like, he's the author of a book that I think it was, I have to like read it now. Shinobi, do you remember the title of the book that I mentioned?
Something hose.
I think it was The Best Business is Hoe Business or something. Anyway, you have some really weird characters who are getting elected, and not only that they're weird, they're also dead. So there's a lot of problems with the election, and a blockchain is not going to solve them unless you think a blockchain would help with doing proof of life that would have prevented this dead guy from getting elected to office, but whatever.
Blockchains for voting is the stupidest idea in the world. And I mean, like, put aside the privacy issues, the auditability issues, like all of this shit. Like, it's key management. Until you solve the key management issue, you're not fixing anything. You're just moving the point of attack or the point of weakness from where the votes get tallied to where the votes get made. Like, we're going to have a voting blockchain. Everybody gets their private key on their smartphone and votes over the internet. How long do you think it'll be until there are massive coordinated attacks on people's smartphones to fucking vote in a way other than what people want to? And it's just never going to get found out.
Yeah, and also, just because you mentioned the phone thing, this is another scheme that has come out of New York, like the Bitcoin ATM that just got the BIT license that I can't use because I don't use smartphones. So yeah, good job setting up a voting system using a device that I don't use.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous whenever it comes to the security of these elections, and but like just the way that the efficiencies are in these elections and the way that they're counted, everything's kind of varies from state to state. I mean, that story in New York, I heard that as well, and luckily here in Colorado, they have like they mail you the ballot, and then you have 2 weeks to look at the ballot and research it and make your decision. And at any point in time in that 2 weeks or on election day, you can just go to one of these drop-off boxes and drop it off. And I mean, that's where it's like some of the real solutions for helping alleviate some of these problems with voting. It's really just like rethinking the way that it's actually done. And, that's where, I mean, this whole thing about voting, and I mean, it was, I was thinking about what I should do as far as voting and everything. And, every time I vote, it's like, wonder how much it really makes a difference. I saw a tweet where somebody bought $17.76 worth of Bitcoin as their vote. And I was like, that's pretty right on. But, yeah, there's a lot going on as far as just like different states and the way that they're going to handle all this. And, Nevada is like the Florida of the West. It's really just like kind of a weird state. And there's a bunch of different things going on there. And but there's a little bit more concise effort in some states in this area to try and get this all this correct and, everybody moving in the same direction. So, yeah, let me just go into this other story about what, in contrast for what's going on over there in India, where, it's really just upsetting to see. I mean, like, India has always sort of had such a stark divide to where you can clearly see. And I guess it's just gotten so bad to where they just feel like they could run over a large group of people. But yeah, on to what's going on here locally, development here in Colorado. Yesterday, like we're discussing, was the midterm elections. And here in Colorado, we just elected Jared Polis as our new state governor. And he served the past 9 years as our local congressman here in Boulder. And most of the headlines you'll see about him, it says the first openly gay governor, which, I mean, I think that's real surface level thinking. The guy is actually really smart when it comes to technology and its possible applications, and really good with business. So I think he's going to be a real positive influence here in Colorado. But also, he's big into Bitcoin. I mean, he put forward that Cryptocurrency Fairness Act bill last year. The bill was defeated, but the legislation was to make it to where anybody in the state could spend up to $600 in crypto without it being a taxable event, because as we know, the capital gains issue has been holding up a lot of people from spending their crypto. And but yeah, he co-founded American Information Systems, an internet service provider, back in the mid 90s, and he did fairly well for himself, founding proflowers.com in 98. And I don't know much about the flower business, but that was a pretty timely move in 98 to found that, and a move into uncertain territory at the time, really. So I've seen him give a speech on Bitcoin and other blockchains at that distributed conference DisCon I attended. And I've also spoke with his staff about some possible projects here local at Boulder. And his staff informed me that he took the lead on that Cryptocurrency Fairness Act last year. It was that bill was something where we were kind of speculating, is this like a staffer that's drawing this up, or does he actually know what he's talking about? And his staff had told me directly that he came up with that idea. So, yeah, that's a good thing. But I just wanted to go over this real quick, because at that DisCon, he actually handed this out. It was his blockchain one pager. And so this is some of the stuff that we can, hope to see here in Colorado, or something that we could say like, look, we've heard you say this before. Like, are you actually going to support this? So I'm just going to read a little bit about this. But, in this is some language that we're not exactly going to be happy about, but it's definitely a positive note as far as just crypto in Colorado. So, quote from the blockchain page, quote, though our economy has grown, the next governor will need to continue to keep our state at the forefront of emerging markets in the technology sector. From supply chains to cybersecurity to banking, blockchain-based solutions have the potential to reshape our economy, jobs, cybersecurity, and government transparency. As governor, I will ensure that Colorado explores the potential use of blockchain technology and work alongside the business community, policy experts, local communities, and Coloradans to build a robust economy for the future. And he's got some bullet points talking about renewing the energy grid with renewable energies, and like we're saying about voting on the blockchain and government records on the blockchain. I mean, it's in here, but I really like this one where he's got a bullet point on regulatory sandbox and securities. Quote, similar to Wyoming, I will work alongside the legislator to create a statewide safe harbor designed to exempt cryptocurrencies from state money transmission laws. And I will work to establish legislation that protects open blockchain tokens, or cryptocurrencies that are exchangeable for goods and services. These moves could allow our state to attract innovative companies that allow them to engage freely in them as issuers, exchanges, wallet providers, without the licensing requirements of the multitude of securities and currency laws. Colorado can pave the way into the future and implement safeguards here at home, with the hope that the federal government can catch up to our progress. These ideas, while bold, will put Colorado on the map for fostering new technology and experimenting with the best way to implement safeguards here at home and across the nation. So, that's some politicking talk, but for real, it's definitely some of the more favorable speech we've heard from a governor. And, right now, I just think there's a real interesting dynamic playing out between Wyoming, South Dakota, and Colorado, and also with Nevada and Texas. There's like this whole middle of the country region where there's kind of some competition as far as like cryptocurrencies being developed in a way that's actually all kind of going in one direction, instead of, a bunch of people saying like, we should build this city out in the desert, or we should do this on the blockchain or that on the blockchain. It's trying to put it all under one wheelhouse. And I mean, I've spoken with some of these guys that go to all these 3 different states, and there's a lot of push and stuff in the background to get Colorado in order. And it's one of the reasons why I moved out here a couple of years ago, was because I saw Colorado's move to legalize cannabis, and they really were the ones to really step out and do it first, where, California had for years just sort of decriminalized it. And the same with some of the Pacific Northwest areas, where Colorado was the one saying, no, this is a legal product and you can open a business and we're going to take taxes on this. And that was a big move in a market, developing. And I see the same sort of thing with crypto and Bitcoin. And yeah, I think that this is a real positive development for Colorado and Bitcoin. I mean, like we're saying, this guy put forward some legislation that would have been positive for the market at the time. But, now with some more legislation and stuff being drawn up in the background, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some favorable legislation come down the pipe in 2019 as far as for crypto in Colorado. But pretty stark contrast from what's going on there in India. But what did you guys think? Did y'all see any news, or y'all remember that story about the cryptocurrency bill? You guys have any impressions on this guy, Jared Polis?
I really don't know anything about him, and I'm just gonna take your word at it, or take your word for it as far as like his stance on technology and systems, in this ecosystem. But if he really does kind of follow through with that attitude and try to really strip away a lot of regulation and compliance requirements for Bitcoin or blockchain businesses, I mean, that's good. Keep doing that. We need more things like that, or more politicians like that in this country, even if at a regional level, to start taking stances like that and making pushes for legislation like that, because it's you really do need a little bit of that noose being loosened to actually start developing things without constantly leaning over your shoulder and wondering what's going to happen to you because you had this idea and tried to build out some system for consumers or end users. Like, it's, I mean, yeah, in some parts of the world, if Bitcoin gets outright made illegal, like, we're going to have to hope that it's actually resilient enough to keep functioning there. But I mean, that's a whole different thing than it literally happening everywhere. Like, we need places where it's not legally like outlawed or constantly castrated with all kinds of insane restrictions, and it's allowed to actually just develop.
Yeah, I mean, really, to me, it just feels like it doesn't need the legal questioning, right? Where there's like this question of like, should I be working in this? Is it legal? Like, there's no real clear guidance on this. And we were listening to that Wyoming legislature talk about building a Bitcoin trust, and they were saying like, why do we need a trust built for a Bitcoin when we don't have trust laws built for any other asset? And the Wyoming legislator was saying that this is really all about marketing and first movers. I mean, the reason why most corporations are incorporated in Delaware is because they were the first movers to build favorable regulation for that situation. And I mean, this is like the race that we're on right now, where Wyoming's trying to, South Dakota just built that BitGo custody business out there with the legislation to back that up. And we've seen favorable laws come down the pipe in Wyoming, but it's still just a fight and a battle to get that right. And if we have this area of the country where there's just like a strong amount of developers continuing to move forward without the question of, will I go to jail, or will I be fined? Will I be taxed so heavy that it's not even worth it? Like, all these questions could be put to rest, and then we could see some real development coming down the pipe. And I'm excited about it, but it definitely does feel like we have some more time to go before we actually start seeing some of that stuff come down. But I think next year we might see some of these money transmission laws getting out of the way, to where we can see some businesses start to really develop some stuff with Bitcoin.
Alrighty, time to move along. So, just a little quick mention. No, Paris sadly isn't here, and probably won't be for a while because the dirty bugger
Party,
made a
man.
move on us that had some time zone conflicts. So, poo on you, No Para. But 743 Bitcoin was put through the last round of Wasabi. So, yeah, that is absolutely huge. And people digging around a little bit on some block explorers found that this was coming from a BitClub network address. So this is likely a miner getting paid out, but it's not only is this a miner washing a large amount of coins through Wasabi, this is just an absolutely insane amount of money put through the software. And it's whoever did this has a very high degree of confidence in Wasabi, because even knowing Nopara as well as I have over the last few years, and having a lot of confidence in him, I'm sorry, man, but I would not trust this much Bitcoin to any wallet that managed the keys solely through software. Like this is a huge vote of confidence from the person who did this.
Yeah, so just to point out, 743 Bitcoin, which was the amount, that's equivalent to somewhere around $4.5 million, right?
Yep.
So it's a huge amount of money.
Yeah, I could understand your statement there. I mean, I definitely trust Nopar, but man, I don't even think I trust myself with that much Bitcoin. Woof, that's like a scary figure. But yeah, it definitely says a lot about Wasabi Wallet and how far it's come along. And, Nopar is staying busy even though he's having fun. And so great work, Nopar. This is really amazing.
Mm-hmm. Congrats, man. All right.
Although I do want to point out, for anyone who thinks, there's a lot of people, anyone who thinks that Thailand is safe, it's not.
It's fun.
Sure it is. If Trump tries to rob you, you just pee on her.
All right.
There's exactly one person who will get that.
I'm thinking his name starts with a C and his last name is DeRose, but
no, actually, no.
Yeah, I mean that's not exactly the attack surface that I'm thinking of, but sure.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Where you at, Zeno?
Alrighty. Into the titular story though. So this elicits a range of emotions for me. Everywhere between laughing my ass off hysterically and feeling very sorry for this kid. But apparently there was an unnamed Indian teenager whose father gave him $1,000 to invest in Bitcoin, which he'd been doing very well with, until he met somebody online running a scam promising increased returns and lost all of his money. So he contacted the FBI to investigate the person who scammed him. And the really sad thing here is that the FBI actually did begin an investigation into this. And we're in the middle of it when he did what he did next, which was Photoshop a fake Aadhaar identity card, create an email address with that card, and then started making bomb threats to the FBI regarding Miami Airport, and actually directly contacted the airport, I believe, like 5 times in order to get the FBI's attention, to get them to investigate the scammer. And, given this is a kid, but come on, man. Like, in what world does the thought pop into your head, I know how I'll get the FBI's attention and get them to investigate this guy? I'll make bomb threats against an American airport. And you think that's a good idea? Like, Jesus Christ. And like this kid is so fucking unbelievably lucky that when the American agency contacted the local police in India and he was arrested and confessed, that he's effectively not going to do jail time. Like he's pretty much going to get away with a slap on the wrist because he apparently he has a decent academic record. But like, Jesus
Really?
Christ.
Are you sure?
It's like, yeah. But like, Jesus Christ, is this kid fucking lucky? And holy shit, was this so many levels of incredible stupid decision making. Like,
Yeah, man. I was reading the story and I was just thinking about, he's just frustrated, man. Like, I mean, yeah, he's probably a smart kid. He's like, investing in Bitcoin and, it's not a bad move over there. But, giving your Bitcoin to someone promising for returns, it sounds kind of like a teenage move where it's just like you haven't been betrayed on that level yet. And somebody betrayed him and he was pissed and he just went ham on it. I mean, like, but yeah, it reminded me, man. Like when I was a kid, I lived in New Orleans, and I had my car stolen at 19. And I called the New Orleans police. It's like my car got stolen. It's like, oh, all right, we'll be right there for a report. And it was like an hour later, I called them back. I was like, I'm waiting for you guys. They were like, oh, we're on our way. And I called back and then they didn't pick up. And then I called back and they were like, wait a minute, what happened? And it just became this thing where I kept calling back and they didn't even understand that I was like, my car had been stolen and I was waiting for an officer. And I kind of did something similar. I called and I was like, but I didn't say something that stupid. I was just like, look, my friend just got murdered and I need somebody here immediately just to see if they would show up, because I kind of just felt like they were just leaving me out of the loop so much that I just wanted to shock them to see if they would return or come or anything. But yeah, they still left me hanging. So I guess lesson from the story, if you're in New Orleans, don't expect the cops to come help you.
Yeah. So this is like, I don't know, this is like the third time that I've heard of some teenager who got like lucky rich, stupid rich on Bitcoin, and then they put it into a scam and then they lost it. Like I think wasn't there like a Finnish kid who was like a Bitcoin millionaire and then he put it into a scam and lost a big chunk of it. Like this keeps happening where like I was never given any money to put into Bitcoin. I've literally never bought Bitcoin. I've only earned it. So the idea that like, I don't know, I feel like part of it is giving teenagers money who probably don't have a lot of experience with earning money. And so they think like, they're a lot more reckless with it because it's not something that they spent time earning themselves. That's probably part of it. And also just because they're teenagers and can make bad decisions about money because schools don't teach you about money. In fact, they make a very big effort to not teach you about how money works because that's how the system wants to treat people, like they don't know how money works. But yeah, so if anyone was wondering, this is the story that inspired the video title. And so I guess you could say this kid made a bad BIP.
Yeah, a very bad BIP. A BIP that you are lucky to get away with your freedom, man. It is. He was really lucky that happened.
He submitted his BIP to the repo without getting it approved first. It's very stupid BIP.
Yeah, another lesson, I guess, is like some of this legal stuff in the background takes time. So if you're not getting a response immediately, just don't start calling in bomb threats.
He reminds me of that guy that was like trolling the Tor project, and I think he tried to submit a BIP or something improperly, and he got really pissed when it got rejected for not being, following the process of BIPs.
oh, you mean and then he went and stole a tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, the notorious casher.
Have either of you heard about what happened to that guy? Because I've not heard a single thing.
He was released. He's not in
dear.
prison, and he was last seen posting screenshots of his desktop with manuals of fighter jets.
Oh. Oh dear, that's plan B or something.
I guarantee somebody's keeping an eye on that kid.
Alrighty. Into the next one. So, just real quick, Bitmain has announced it is launching its 7-nanometer chips. They will be on sale supposedly tomorrow in two models, the S15 and the T15, although there's not really any clear details on the differentiation between them. I'm assuming it's just net amount of hash rate. That, from my understanding, the T models have just usually been smaller hash rate equipment using the same chips, but they are still kind of just floating on vague announcements, such as more than 1 billion transistors, or pointing to the energy consumption figures based on isolated lab testing without an actual full piece of equipment. And that's, I think, pretty telling that there's still not even any detailed information on the web page. And, you know, given all of the shenanigans during their IPO filing, all the issues that they've had with a large number of their recent chip runs, the fact that an insider has been claiming there were huge problems with the tape out of the 7 nanometer chips, and a large amount, pretty much all of the insider information recently being leaked from Bitmain has later been found to be completely accurate. I think it's pretty telling that they're not giving it any concrete details, and they're attempting to just rush this to market. And I don't think this is going to play out very well for Bitmain. And there's also rumors that I've heard circulating around that they're actually being cut off from TSMC in terms of chip manufacturing because of a large amount of debt that they're racking up, and now are required to pretty much pay upfront for all manufacturing. So they're really getting smashed into a corner hard. And if this pretty much plays out like a lot of the rumored information is painting it, as in a pretty much oversold electrical efficiency claims, a huge fuck up in the tape out process, which either is going to lead to even less efficiency in electrical consumption, a large number of useless chips, or a combination of that, on top of all the other problems that have been piling up for Bitmain. I don't think this is going to save them. Like, Bitfury just launched new chips, and we'll get a little more into them a little bit later. A former engineer started a company that has the same claimed efficiencies, effectively, of a 7 nanometer chip with a 14 nanometer chip. Multiple competitors have already rolled out 7 nanometer chips. Like, this is not going well. Like, this is leading one place unless they pull a long series of rabbits out of a hat, and it's bankruptcy. Like, this company is not going to be able to survive if they keep pretty much getting hit in the dick left and right every time they try to do something. And I don't think that trying to rush faulty or less than advertised in efficiency hardware to the market is going to fix this.
Yeah, there's something weird going on here where I was reading some comments, and I was thinking some people are on point saying that, yeah, this is Bitmain. They're going to ship you some dusty hardware that they've been using for a period of time, and you're going to get it. I think this is like, yeah, we're going past the old days where Bitmain was the sole provider of this mining equipment, and people just bought these things and used them. I mean, I imagine they're going to sell some of these units for sure. And but yeah, like you're saying, there's just been a lot of questionable activity as far as like their ability to actually effectively manufacture these and effectively get all the deals done to make these things as efficient as possible, especially when there's all this competition in the space. And I mean, just the timing is really like the most curious thing to me. I mean, November 8th is 1 week before their supposed November 15th fork here with Satoshi's Vision and Bitcoin ABC and all this nonsense that's going on over there. And you see Blockchain.Info airdropping a bunch of Stellar at the same time they're closing off their ecosystem and to work with Bitcoin ABC. I feel like there's like a struggle to get maybe some liquidity for Bitmain to try and keep making these moves as far as they are, like trying to pull the rabbit out of the hat. And yeah, I mean, the people that do buy these, I wouldn't be surprised if they're, sitting on the shelf collecting dust because of some error that happened or because they quickly became inefficient. It's just too much going on with Bitmain to just be like, oh yeah, they're releasing some new miners. These things should be rock solid. Like, it's a different time.
So my only comment on this is, I mean, it's slightly unrelated, but it has to do with, the general trend of Bitmain basically really crashing in terms of their business. When all of the crazy stupidness was happening around the energy consumption articles in the media, again, about a week ago, one of the articles that I kept seeing was one about how Bitmain is running one of the largest coal-based mining operations, which, I mean, I hadn't heard that before now, but it doesn't surprise me because when I thought about it, I was like, well, if I was running a business that really didn't have much hope for, a long-term it didn't have much hope on a long-term perspective, and I was like trying to save as much money as possible in the short term, I wouldn't really be thinking about like the, energy efficiency or the source of the energy that I was using for my mining operation. I wouldn't care about renewables because it's like I have to operate on a short-term basis to get as much money as possible. Who cares where the energy is coming from and whether it's clean? So it doesn't surprise me that a company that is on its way out, as far as I can tell, is one of the operators of the largest coal-based mining operation, because that's a short-term gamble if you're not using renewable energy. I mean, because people think it's just about like you need to have some kind of environmentalist, bias or something to want to do that. But no, it actually makes sense from a business perspective to find renewable energy sources that aren't just going to go away or might be subject to, more regulations in terms of fulfilling all of these climate change policies that have been coming out over the past few decades. It just makes sense. It's not a thing that you have to really care about the environment. It just makes sense. So the fact that Bitmain's not doing that and is going for more short-term options that are making people angry does not surprise me.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty though. Let's end this story on a meme, courtesy of Crypto Christopher Walken.
All right.
Don't worry, guys. The S15 and T15 will only be slightly used. Here at Bitmain, we ROI your ASICs, so you don't have to.
Yeah, that's about right. Great meme, man.
Alrighty. So next up, we have a long blob of stupid.
Let's get into it, man.
So yesterday, the Supreme Court of Justice in Venezuela ordered an unnamed national institute to pay indemnities to one of its employees for a workplace injury in the Petro. And so they're ordering the equivalent of 266 petros, which would be around $15,960 for the injury. And they released a statement on social media. It is established that the Supreme Court set this criterion taking as a reference the value that the national executive sets for the Petro in order to materialize justice in favor of whoever is affected in their rights and interests and to counteract the actions that have sought to destabilize the national economy. And this is just like really a pile of my head hurting digging through this, because we've seen passport payments shifted to the Petro. We've seen banks be ordered to adopt the Petro. We've seen attempts to peg it to the Bolivar, while previously the National Assembly declared it unconstitutional, tried to declare it illegal. Like, there's just all kinds of conflicting insanity all over the place. Like, this is just a giant smoke cloud of what the fuck is going on. And in the middle of all this, supposedly, although I've been unable to verify this because honestly, I'm a little skeptical of following through a number of links to actually try to look at where the sale is supposedly begun. But supposedly the public sale of the Petro started on the 5th of November. But again, I'm not really too keen on the idea of potentially having somebody show up knocking on my door for violating U.S. sanctions. So I have hesitated from really digging through all of the sites involved with the potential sale of this. But if this is going on, if not, I'm not 100% certain, then this is something I'm probably going to be keeping an eye on for further developments for a little bit. But really, the big cherry on the top amongst all of this is huge confusion on what the hell blockchain that this is running on. Because, I mean, they've been making all of these crazy claims about use picking up and finding use cases for it, and all these legal attempts at mandating it. But where the hell is it running? Is it Ethereum? Is it MEM? Well, apparently, it's its own blockchain now. And it's pretty much just a clone of Dash, going so far that it's actually pretty much just plagiarized a large number of graphics and sections from the Dash white paper, and the architecture just effectively it seems identical. And there's actually a block explorer. That's the explorador.petro.gov.be link in the description. But this is literally just a fork of Dash. Like it's using the X11 mining algorithm, just like Dash. Has the instant send feature where master nodes effectively commit to transactions before they're actually confirmed by miners. And effectively has these master nodes deciding what is going to be put forward in terms of changes to consensus and architecture. It's got 4 megabyte blocks, 60 seconds between each block. Again, the proof of work, proof of stake hybrid like Dash. But the interesting thing is the mining really makes no fucking sense to me. Because in Dash, you have a 45% split, both sides between master nodes and miners, and 10% going to the development treasury, which is mostly PR money. But the Petro is apparently going to distribute 85% of the network's reward to master nodes, with 15% being kind of airdropped to users in an initial phase, as it's put. So what is the incentive to mine this if the miners are getting none of the reward? It's all apparently going to the master nodes or to a user airdrop. So what's the point of having a proof of work? How is it going to be incentivized? What use is it without an incentive? And it's like this story has gotten more absurd, more ridiculous, more nonsensical the longer it's played out. And I honestly, the few people out there who look at this as something serious, as something that's actually going to bring utility to anything, I have no insight into what is going on in your mind. This makes no sense. There is absolutely no consistency to the legal interpretation or authorization of this to exist. That the technical details have shifted so many times without explanation, without any kind of advance warning, that I literally, it's absurd. This has gone from Ethereum to NEM back to Ethereum again. Now it's its own blockchain, apparently, with an architecture and setup completely lifted from another cryptocurrency and adapted in a way that, to me, does not make coherent sense in terms of the incentives. It's... yeah.
I don't know either, man. I mean, I'm just listening to it. I mean, yeah, you were saying Petro for passports, Petro payouts. I mean, pegged to 1 barrel of oil, like you're saying. I mean, was on Ethereum, NIM. I mean, it is just a back and forth game where maybe they're just trying to grab as much money as they can while they're where they're at. I mean, I I don't know if this guy Nicholas Moradano or whatever is going to actually be there for that long of a period of time. I mean, like you're saying, there's a lot of back and forth over there. So he's just trying to grab up as much as he can while he's there. How do you pronounce that though?
Maduro.
Maduro. Okay. Yeah. Nicholas Maduro. That guy, he's got a bunch of different ideas. I mean, I imagine he was trying to cut out the whole. I mean, I'm just thinking about along the lines of like, why would you cut out the divvying up of the master and minor and the marketing budget? I mean, like if it's gonna be the government's budget that they're using is this like stash of Petro, then I guess the most of it goes to them, and the master nodes would be. I suppose they're friends or just like they're going to force you to mine it in that country. And, you'll get a small percentage for participating and the bulk of it goes there to support the government. I'm totally just out of left field.
Sense. Like it literally makes no fucking sense. Except a deranged dictator just pulling a Ponzi scheme.
After Ponzi, I bet you he's racked up on some Ethereum and NIM through those deals. And like, I mean, maybe he'll, maybe he's making some money with Dash too on the side on this fork. But yeah, definitely some scamming going on.
Yeah. All right, any comments from you, Janine, before we slide along? Okay, why is that doing that, Janine? Careful.
Uh-oh.
Careful.
I think the comment
I see a blur. I see a blur, Janine. Hello? Okay. No, the blur's back. What's going on here?
I didn't take the sticker off.
Oh goodness.
I was trying to do the sculpture and I didn't take the sticker off. I was like, what's going on? My camera's messed up.
Okay, you're gonna end up doing something you can't take back if you keep playing with that camera.
He's right about that. Let's just let's unplug that thing.
This is a special occasion where I actually took my sticker off just to show you a picture of a butt sculpture.
Ah, man. All right. On to the next one. So this not really that shocking to anybody who's really been paying attention to things, but BTCC is permanently shutting down its mining pool by pretty much November 15th is going to be shutting down its servers and ceasing all operations entirely by the 30th, which I'm assuming means processing payouts for any outstanding rewards for the people mining at their pool. And they've kind of been really quiet about the rationale for this. They're pretty much just announcing the shutdown, giving the timelines for actually killing the servers, and then the final processing of payouts. And it issued an announcement stating that they firmly believe that the digital encryption assets, assuming that's a horrible translation, and blockchain industry represented by Bitcoin will continue to develop, improve, and we will see you again. And really, I think it's kind of a no-brainer why they shut down. Just give me a second. It's been more than a month since the last block was mined by BTCC. And come on, JavaScript. Da-na-na, da-na-na. Yeah, so the last block mined by them was 1 month and 13 days ago. They mined 2 blocks that day. Then 1 the day before, 1 2 days before that, 1 3 days before that. And if we go to the main page here, if we look at the hash rate distributions between pools on Blocktrail, and I will note, for those who watched the beginning, I am not looking at any identifying information, so it is perfectly okay to use random block explorers for things like this. But the 24-hour BTCC doesn't show up. 1 week don't show up. 1 month averages, they don't show up. We have to go all the way back to the 6-month average for BTCC to even show up in the pool distribution, and they only show up for 1.2%. So for months, they've pretty much just been bleeding hash rate. And I mean, honestly, since this time last year, around when 2x was going on, when they were a significant amount of the network hash rate, they've dropped to nothing. And really, the entire landscape has changed radically. I mean, almost 20% of the network is an unknown entity, pooling. I actually think it's flagged as, although there's still a larger number of blocks that are mined by completely unknown entities. The hash rate share has completely shifted around among Geon's pools. I mean, Via BTC is mining a lot more compared to BTC.com. F2 pools slid to the back. BTC Slush is really one of the few entities that hasn't really changed that much. Bitfury is actually growing again. Like for a long time, they were down at 1% or less. Like they're in the 4%. But we've seen a large amount of kind of reorganization of hash rate among the pools. And I'm assuming in the background, a large amount of reorganization in terms of individuals' ownership, percentage-wise of the network. And it's, this is just the way a competitive aspect of the ecosystem like this works. Like if people stop mining at your pool, you are losing a share of the network rate, the consistency of payouts, which is pretty much lessening the incentive for the people still mining there to keep mining there. And it just kind of snowballs. And really, once it gets to a certain point, like it just doesn't make sense to mine there. You go somewhere else because you're in this for the consistency of the payout. And it's really what it is. And honestly, oh well. One could say that, looking back to how hardcore they pushed with the New York agreement and SegWit 2x, being one of the few pools and exchanges that claimed the largest hash rate would be Bitcoin no matter what, and what they would list as Bitcoin. One could say karma's a bitch.
Yeah, I can imagine we could definitely say that. But yeah, I mean, it's really just telling. I mean, looking through that block explorer at the hash rate, and you can see the names dropping down in the list. I mean, BTCC definitely dropped out of that into oblivion. But I mean, like at the same rate, I mean, I saw definitely some more guys that are just like aligning with all of Bitmain and all that. Their rate drops too, and yeah, so. I mean, like you're saying, I mean, the SegWit 2x push was not smart. And, whenever you do that and you basically make a claim like that, I mean, there's a bunch of people that are definitely aligning themselves with this idea of like, well, it's this closed ecosystem with only a few nodes that we control. And I mean, over time, we might see this be a general trend amongst all those 2x guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, think like the entire reason that they were pushing for this kind of shit is because their business model was not sustainable. They needed to alter the network to subsidize their business model. And yeah, I mean, some of them are going out of business. Others are pivoting to shit coins and attempting to shift their business model over to other projects that will pretend they can actually subsidize it until it implodes. And a lot of them are just taking more and more malicious actions against Bitcoin in a kind of childish retribution because Bitcoin would not let itself be shaped around a few companies' business models. And I mean, it's how it goes. Businesses that can't adapt fail.
Yep, it's the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. All right, what do we have up next? Bitstamp.
When's the last time you heard Bitstamp?
Well,
A few months.
yeah, who cares? You heard about him right now. So Bitstamp is contracting with Cinnabar to get a new matching and trading engine. And for those who don't remember, Cinnabar is a company that was recently bought by NASDAQ and has actually had a number of partnerships, including with BitGo in the cryptocurrency space, but is mostly known for pretty much developing trading systems and matching engines for legacy financial institutions. A few of the companies they've actually developed things for: the Australian Securities Exchange, Brazil's B3 Exchange, the Gold and Commodities Exchange in Dubai, Japan Exchange Group, the London Metal Exchange, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So they've developed actual back-end systems for a pretty big number of huge legacy markets. And they're going to be rolling out the Trade Express system on Bitstamp. And David Osojnik, hope I'm pronouncing that right, the CTO of Bitstamp, is saying that when this system rolls out, it's going to increase the speed of their system by over 1,200 times and facilitate around 400 times more throughput. And so, considering the fact that Bitstamp actually kept their systems up and running through the entire mania of December last year, this kind of increase is pretty much setting them up to be able to meet whatever insane increase in demand comes their way. And this is, to me, this is kind of signaling like Bitstamp is a company that's going to be here for decades to come. Like, they're actually adapting to what this ecosystem is going to require of them as a business to continue thriving. They're not hacking together a bunch of Ruby on Rails, Silicon Valley startup bullshit into a back end and assuming that can actually scale them up to millions and millions of customers and keep them running for the next decade. They're looking at legacy systems that have actually had to process and deal with this kind of volume and scale, and looking to them for an example as to how to structure their own systems, which is exactly what you have to do to survive in this space. Like, I've been saying this for more than a year. You're going to see one of two things happen to exchanges in this space. They're either going to adapt and learn to implement the kinds of systems that legacy institutions actually operate on, or they're going to go out of business and be outcompeted by legacy institutions or bought by them. And this pretty much shows me that Bitstamp, they have their head on straight and they understand what they're actually going to have to do as a business to continue competing, as we see players like ICE, like the Swiss Stock Exchange, like a large financial institutions enter this space to really start offering cryptocurrency products and markets. And I think they're going to do fabulously well actually thinking ahead and planning for this.
Yeah, there at the beginning when I was saying I hadn't heard much from them is because, yeah, I mean, throughout that whole argument about scaling, they really just took a neutral stance and just kind of stayed quiet about the whole thing. And I remember there was a little bit of back and forth there, just curious as to their actual position and everything. But I mean, it was a smart move to just sort of stay quiet about it. I mean, we're talking about these other guys that align themselves during the NYA and how that's affecting them. And I mean, this is like you're saying, it's a smart move to look at a company like Cinnabar that's been doing this for a long time with traditional institutions. So yeah, I mean, kudos for them for, just basically keeping their head down and doing the work.
I mean, it's a good thing. Like, this is a business that has its head on straight, and we need businesses like this to survive. Like, this is not going to look good in 10 years if we only have the Coinbases left and the legacy institutions that swoop in to try and play the same kind of bullshit games they do on the stock markets. Like, we need businesses like Bitstamp to actually continue to thrive and grow and maintain a place in this ecosystem, or we're going to just blink one day and realize that we are a small minority of those trying to influence consensus. And that can wind up going very badly in a large number of ways. All right, we got 2 stories to go. All right, so Bitfury back in the news. They have recently secured $80 million in a private funding round that includes, among a large group of people, Galaxy Digital, which is, wow, brain fart, Mike Novogratz merchant bank that was specifically established to function in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And they're pretty much doing this, not completely to rule out an IPO in the future, but just as a step, without any real concrete decisions as far as when or if they're going to IPO anytime soon. But they're pretty much going to be using this to try and branch out and pump more money into R&D for their mining hardware, as well as a lot of the software projects that they've been developing, like Crystal, their surveillance project, for law enforcement, which none of us here are very fond of, as well as trying to branch out into artificial intelligence, like Bitmain has been doing. So that is, I think, showing a desire to deeper integrate surveillance into their business model in terms of synergizing potentially development of deep learning ASICs as well as software like their Crystal surveillance platform with that type of hardware. And I am not, it's every time Bitfury comes up, like it's just, what do I have to say except I am not happy with this company and what they're doing. And I think ultimately they're just going to be a company that exists to attack and undermine the fungibility and the privacy of this entire ecosystem. Like they're the more time goes on, the more their business model seems to pivot in that direction and start intertwining other aspects of it with that surveillance aspect. And I think that this is something that's, we need a lot more people doing things like Samurai to actually counteract, because they're not going anywhere. They seem to be one of the companies in this space that is not really overexpanding, not overextending itself, and being reckless financially. So they're not going anywhere. They're going to be here for a long time, and we need to learn how to deal with their presence.
Yeah, like you're saying, I mean, not too jazzed about them looking into and developing Crystal and trying to help develop chain analytics like that. But at the same time, like you're saying, we got Samurai Wasabi. We really need to build those things out to help increase the fungibility and try and get Bitcoin where it needs to be. I mean, this is never going to be an easy road, right? I mean, like Bitcoin is the battle. And I mean, at some points it's like, your clear, concise enemy. I mean, we got guys signing an agreement in New York and they're saying they're going to move forward with this 2x thing. It's like, there's the opposing force. And sometimes it's not so easy to see. I mean, like we saw Bitfury support 2x, and I mean, they've definitely been some actors in the space where it's like, okay, they've got their own incentives, and they're just going to keep moving forward. We got to keep moving forward. It'll be a bounce back and forth, but ultimately in the end, I think that we're going to win the day. But it's definitely not just set in stone. I mean, we got to keep moving forward too.
All right, you didn't cough up a comment. I know you got one. I know you want to say something.
I want to say something, the truth.
It just doesn't surprise me that Bitfury is going for the surveillance model, because ever since they announced the Crystal thing, I thought they were going down this path, and I confronted them about it at the Lightning Network, or the Lightning Hack Day in Berlin, because they were a sponsor, which kind of scared me, but I guess they paid for all the food. It was all vegan food, by the way.
Good stuff.
I mean, I challenged them, and it's on the live stream if you want to see it after they do their talk. You can't see me because I deliberately stood behind a pillar. But yeah, I challenged them about it, and the response that I got back was absolutely not comforting at all. It was more of this bullshit about, in order for it to go mainstream, we have to cooperate with regulators. And it's like, no, the whole point of this is that you don't have to, and it still works. It's about decentralized power, decentralized ownership, each person controlling their own keys, and also making sure that it doesn't make the same mistakes as the current financial system, where basically all of your private information has to be given to a bunch of parties that you really don't know. And you end up, any of the identity documents that you use as part of that system, if any of them gets compromised, then your financial history or your financial stability can be compromised as well. So we're trying to create something that is the opposite of that. And so if cooperating with regulators means making this system more like that system, it's like, no, we're not going to do it. There's a whole ton of people that are going to resist that. And I'm one of them. And if Bitfury is not going to resist it and is going to actively participate in building it, then I say, fuck off.
Well said.
Yep. All right. So let me finish typing one thing out to a obstinate, unintelligent person in the chat right now.
We should invite him on one day.
All right. There we go. And back to important things. So last story is really just kind of a neat little thing here. And I'm not really sure how many, if anybody watching, uses ChromeOS or Chromebooks. Or I'm betting if any do, there's a decent chance that you pretty much just wipe them and flash them with a full Linux install anyway. But if there is anybody out there who actually has a Chromebook and actually uses ChromeOS with it, you can now run Bitcoin Core on it if you have one of the more recent models. ChromeOS is finally merged in a native Linux terminal support that does not require activating developer mode and kind of negating a lot of the security precautions that lock down the system. And so because of this, you can now literally on ChromeOS, without tinkering with anything, if you have a model that supports the new Linux terminal, you can download Bitcoin Core and you can run a pruned node directly on your Chromebook while still maintaining all of the malware security features of ChromeOS. So, anybody out there who does use it, I know like one of the big cases of use here for a Chromebook would be something that's easily wipeable. You could travel with if you're not doing anything that requires an intensive, full operating system. You could actually carry a full Bitcoin node on a system like this. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool. It's a cloud-based device that can now literally run a full private secure Bitcoin node and wallet on it. And it's it's pretty nice. I'm actually seriously considering taking one of my Chromebooks right now and reinstalling ChromeOS on it just to see like how this works and how I can handle this, and more importantly, how encryption of the wallet is actually set up. Because if this is something set up in a way and keep encrypted so that your wallet's not accessible in terms of your addresses, I think I might just leave one of mine set up with this as a travel laptop, because I could actually not have to worry about a lot of the security concerns traveling, but still have full private access to a Bitcoin wallet, which is pretty fucking cool.
Heck yeah, man. I think that's pretty cool that they're making it a little bit easier to, mess around with these Chromebooks. I mean, I know that you're going to be doing it, man. You're like the Chromebook operator over there. So, yeah, it's definitely pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, though. So unless Janine wants to shit talk Google, which I can't blame her for, I guess that brings us to the final thoughts. So Janine, are we going into the final thoughts?
I mean, I don't actually have a particular link today for a final thought. 'Cause I kind of shared it with the election stuff and that weird guy who is dead getting elected. But I will quickly grab the article that I wrote exactly, well, I think close to 1 year ago about that Ars Technica article by Timothy Lee, who coincidentally has a name very close to the guy who's credited with like building the web and stuff, but no, it's not the same person. Definitely not.
No.
Wow,
Come
I've
on.
only written 2 pieces this year. That's really bad. Investigations.
Been busy. Good investigations though. Provocative cunts. That's not it.
Alright.
That's the title of it, right?
I feel like I have to use that somewhere now.
It's such a great title. Yeah, provocative cunts. Sounds like
Okay.
you're really
So-
doing some slang work.
So if anyone's wondering, the picture that I think I mentioned it, but it's that art sculpture that I was showing is in Prague, and the captions calls it provocative Kunst, which is just it's a German book, so it's German for provocative art. Kunst is art. It's not that other word that I'm not going to say.
I was not saying that other word either.
Mm-hmm.
So I did post the link in there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get all the JavaScript to stop being
Uh-oh.
If the actual artwork wasn't great enough, the name just tops it off.
Well, that wasn't the name. That was just description. It's provocative art somewhere in Prague, but I don't think that was the name. I have no idea what the
Okay.
name is. I can check right now. Let me see. While Shinobi is loading, I will look for the name of this weird butt sculpture.
In
Alright.
Prague.
Let's see. The name of it. I don't think it actually says what the name is. It just says a picture and says it's provocative art in the center, Prague, somewhere.
You gotta get the name of that artist. Gotta commission a project.
All right, Janine, your thought is loaded. You must
Oh.
comment
Didn't
on your
load yet.
thought.
Yeah, so if anyone's wondering, this is, I'm not sure what date I published it on. The date should be at the top. Oh, I actually published in December. It took me a whole month. Wow. Okay. So this is an article that was written by Timothy. I mean, it was started after an article was published by Timothy Bealey in Ars Technica about the end of Segwit2x and how it was such a disappointment. And now what are we going to do? And the Lightning Network is going to be a failure. And I just wanted to remind people of, yeah, for some reason the image won't load. Don't know why. But yeah, that's at my website, which I basically just use as a landing page. It's just a WordPress site because I'm too lazy to set up my own website.
I am too. I need to do that.
Alrighty. Rick, boom.
All right, yeah. Final thought. I don't know if you guys caught it on Twitter the other day, but shout out to Nothing Much for tagging me and pinging me and telling me about this little contest that Coin Center was doing to try and get us to meme Peter there on the stand while he was testifying to Congress. So I did these couple, and yesterday I got my Ledger Nano S. So I just wanted to thank Niraj, Peter, Coin Center, all you guys out there. Nothing much. Hey, appreciate it, guys. Needed this. Got a Trezor and a ledger now. Sorry.
To be fair, that's probably how a French person would pronounce it.
Well, I got some French in me, so it's all right.
And dun dun dun. I really need to put more time and thought into selecting memes for the end of the show. I'm having a blank here. That's it.
There's definitely some NPC memes that are rocking it right now.
Something about how much you hate The Walking Dead
Alright.
since season 5.
Okay, yeah, it's
Season 1.
meme. All right, 1, fuck The Walking Dead. They've ruined it. 2, here's the final meme. Go forth and wage meme jihad. We'll see you guys on Sunday. Toodaloo.
Later, everyone.